Pillow Talks Tax, he has been for over 45 years, and there isn't a human on the planet with more experience solving problems on behalf of taxpayers. He started the industry of tax resolution and has trained countless tax professionals on how to do exactly what he does. And he actually wants to train you. And that's why he started the Taxpayers Defense Conference. It is now in its 32nd year training taxpayers on how to go up against the IRS. And as he says, the IRS never gets tired of getting their asses kicked, and he is just the guy to do it, and he's just the guy to teach you to do it. Tell us more about the Taxpayers Defense Conference. What is on the itinerary for this?
The Taxpayers Defense Conference is specifically designed to teach attorneys, accountants, and enrolled agents how to represent their clients before the IRS. Now, Josh, there's hundreds of seminars out there that teach tax professionals how to prepare tax returns, how to do tax planning, how to do tax accounting, that sort of thing. That's not what we do at this conference. What we do at this conference is teach tax professionals specifically how to represent clients before the IRS. So we focus on IRS abuse prevention, cure, problems resolution, and taxpayers' rights issues. Every year since 1993, this seminar has been on the cutting edge of what's going on in the IRS, and the 2025 Taxpayers Defense Conference will be no different. We will talk about the most important things happening within the IRS and Congress that you can use in your practice immediately to start representing and saving your clients money.
The concept of the conference is a multiple-day interactive experience. You come in, sit down, and learn from the very best in the industry. What is the itinerary for this year's conference?
All right, so you're exactly right. It's a 2-day seminar. It's 14 hours of continuing legal education. Our seminar is certified by the Minnesota Bar Association for 14 hours of continuing education. The Taxpayers Defense Institute, which sponsors the conference, is certified by the IRS as a continuing education provider. We will provide continuing education credits for enrolled agents through the Internal Revenue Service. We've been doing this for years. The conference starts with an update on what's going on with the IRS. We start up with a topic called the IRS in transition. There's been a big shakeup in the Internal Revenue Service over the last 6 or 7 months. I'm going to do a deep dive into what's going on with the IRS right now, what their budget looks like, what their Inflation Reduction Act appropriation of $80 billion looks like. A lot of people don't realize that a lot of that money's been clawed back. So I'm going to shake that down and show you what that looks like. We're going to look at the IRS's strategic operating plan. This is something that very few people are aware of, Josh. What is the IRS going to focus on in the future in terms of enforcement, in terms of taxpayer assistance, in terms of business systems modernization? All of these elements of the IRS I'm going to look at in great detail so you as a tax professional know exactly what to expect in terms of IRS enforcement insofar as your clients are concerned.
So the first day is an overview of what's going on. The first session, I should say.
That's just the first session.
The session then goes directly into appeals functions generally,
I'll tell you exactly what that means. The theme of this conference is how to deal with the IRS's Office of Appeals. Every decision of the IRS made by lower level IRS personnel is subject to appeal. No decision that low level IRS personnel makes is ever final. You always have a right to challenge that decision. Most people don't realize that, and unfortunately, too many tax professionals might understand that they have the right to appeal, but aren't fully aware of how to exercise that right. So this session 2 is going to look at the appeals function generally. I'm going to break down the very basic process of how to do an appeal. I'm going to go through what the rules of practice are before the IRS's Office of Appeals. I'm going to talk about the IRS's Appeals Office customer service and customer support. So when you come away from this second session, you're going to understand exactly how this appeals office functions. You're going to know what cases are subject to appeal, what cases are not subject to appeal, and most importantly, Josh, I'm going to break down what the IRS's settlement guidelines are. A lot of people don't understand what the IRS's settlement guidelines are. In other words, what does it take to get them to the table to discuss a specific settlement resolution? And I'm going to expose those secrets to you and show you exactly how they work.
So this is a great opportunity to learn the hidden secrets of appeals and the hidden secrets of settlements.
I'm going to go through the details that can only be learned through experience. I've been doing this for more than 45 years. I've seen every kind of tax case you can imagine, and we settle cases with the IRS. We settle them in the appeals office. We settle them before the United States Tax Court precisely because I know how these procedures work, and I'm going to show you what those secrets are.
So then the third session is going to be Appeal CDP Retrained. CDP retained its jurisdiction, which is talking about who gets control when a case gets to appeals. Is that how I'm understanding this?
Not exactly. When we're talking about selection collection, when we're talking about CDP, we're talking about collection due process appeals, all right? The CDP rights are covered under section 6320 regarding tax liens and 6330 regarding tax levies. Every tax lien and every proposed tax levy is subject to a collection due process appeal. In my opinion, this is the single most important right that taxpayers have when they're dealing with the IRS, the right to challenge collection actions through the collection due process appeal. Now, one of the little known secrets about collection due process appeals is that the appeals office actually has ongoing jurisdiction over that particular decision. This is not a one and done deal. If you set up an installment agreement on behalf of your client, the client's paying, pick a number, say $700 a month, and the client's circumstances change, and now he can't pay the $700 a month anymore. Most of the time, what happens is when clients default on those payments, they go back into enforced collection. But I'm going to show you how to avoid that, and I use the appeals office continuing jurisdiction rules to renegotiate the deal. See, this is what's so important, is they've got the authority to renegotiate deals that they have previously made. And I'm telling you, Josh, there's not one 5,000 that knows how this process works. And I'm going to break it down for you and show you exactly how to use it to the benefit of your client.
So in that sense, you want the appeals to retain jurisdiction. You don't want it to go back to enforcement. That makes sense.
That's exactly right. We want our cases. Here's something that you need to understand. You will always and always do better with the Office of Appeals than you will in an enforcement function. All right. So we're talking about enforcement functions. By that, I'm talking about the examination function, the people that do the audits, and the collection function, the tax collectors that bang on your door and issue wage levies and bank levies. You will always do better in front of the appeals office than you will with those enforcement functions if you understand how to use the appeals office. And that's what this seminar is going to do for you, give you those tools that you need to get this stuff done.
The next session 4 is on artificial intelligence, research problems, and ethics. And that's a big one right now. ChatGPT this, ChatGPT that, ChatGPT do my taxes. How about that?
I got news for you. My seminar includes 2-hour ethics credits. The Internal Revenue Service for enrolled agents requires at least 2 hours every year of ethics credits. So this qualifies as an ethic credit. If you're an attorney and you need continuing education ethics credits, the Minnesota Bar Association has verified this course for 2 hours of ethics credits. And this is the subject, artificial intelligence. We're going to break down what the artificial intelligence tools are that are available. I just finished a detailed analysis of 4 of the closed source platforms available for tax professionals. I'm talking about Tax Analyst, Bloomberg, KPMG, and Thomson Reuters. Those 4 companies provide closed source platforms for legal research specifically in tax law and tax compliance. So I'm going to break those down and show you how those work. And then we're going to talk about the American Bar Association's rules of ethical consideration specifically as they relate to artificial intelligence. One of the things I'm going to do, Josh, is break down the case of United States versus Michael Cohen. Cohen was President Trump's attorney that got in trouble. He got indicted and pled guilty to tax evasion and lying to Congress. There was a serious problem with hallucinated court decisions that were provided to the United States District Court by Cohen's attorney in that particular case. And I'm going to break that down and show you how to avoid these problems. I've identified about 6 or 7 specific ABA model rules of professional conduct that have to be followed that apply to artificial intelligence. And I'm going to show you how those things apply to your particular practice and how you can stay out of trouble with the IRS. So we're going to take a very broad view of artificial intelligence and then narrow it down to specific applications. If you're new to using artificial intelligence for client management tools and legal research, this session alone is going to be worth the price of the ticket to the Taxpayers Defense Conference.
Hallucinating precedent seems like a great way to start a long-term legal battle.
How you impress a federal judge is by citing a case in your brief that does not exist. And it is a real danger. It's something you got to be aware of, and we're going to show you how to avoid these problems.
Session 5 then is the Taxpayers Assistance and Service Act, which is something that we've talked about multiple times right here on Talks Taxes. So if you're curious what that is, go back and check out the Taxpayer and Service Act episodes that we have produced. Do you have any updates for us on that?
Yeah, there are updates. What's happening with the Taxpayer Assistance and Service Act is, first of all, let me give you some background. The Taxpayer Assistance and Service Act Act is a very broad proposal that came out of the United States Senate earlier this year, but has been not attended to because of all of the time that Congress spent with crafting and getting past the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. But now that's behind us, the Taxpayer Assistance and Service Act is starting to pick up some steam and generates attention in Congress. There are significant elements of this bill that we need to address. I'm going to address the elements of the bill that deal with the appeals office. All right, there's 6 or 7 different provisions in the bill that give the appeals office certain jurisdiction and authority. I'm going to break that down. I'm going to talk about the elements of the bill that deal with the Taxpayer Advocate's Office, a very important appeal function within the Office of the Taxpayer Advocate that is set up to function as a liaison between the IRS and taxpayers. So tax professionals need to know how to use the Taxpayer Advocate Service, the changes and the additional powers they will have. Perhaps most importantly, there are significant additions to collection due process appeal rights that will be built into the law as a result of this Taxpayer Assistance and Service Act. The collection due process appeal rights are the most important rights that taxpayers have when they're dealing with the IRS, and you as a tax professional need to know how these work. If you don't understand how to invoke collection due process appeal rights on behalf of your client, you're risking a malpractice claim. These rights are so important and effective for taxpayers. If you don't know how to use them, you're making a very serious mistake that puts you at risk. And of course, you're waiving your client's rights. So you do not ever want to get into the situation where you're waiving your client's collection due process appeal rights, and you're making a very serious mistake if you don't understand the full breadth and scope of those rights.
Then day one ends with a session on Taxpayer Solutions Workshop, which is essentially the opportunity for any of these tax pros to come with problems or questions that they've had throughout the year and get to a forum on that topic. Is that right?
Yeah, it's exactly right. And I like to say this: bring your problem cases to the defense conference and you will go home with a solution. I will moderate the question and answer, but we've got a room full of tax professionals, Josh, that have been doing this work in some cases for 20 and 30 and 40 years. We've got a lot of experience in that room, attorneys and accountants and enrolled agents. If you've got a difficult case, you can say, hey, here's what I'm going through right now. What do you guys think? And we'll bounce that around and you'll go home with ideas that will lead to a solution in your most difficult cases. And of course, we have a broad question and answer session period of time as well. So any questions that arise that are relevant to any of the issues that we've talked about during the day, whether it's appeals, continuing jurisdiction, or CDP, you'll be able to get those questions answered at that time. This is one of the unique things about the Taxpayers Defense Conference, because we've got so much high-powered experience in that room. In addition to myself, plus my friends that have been doing this work for, as I said, 20 or 30 years, we have the unique ability to give insight into complicated questions that you just can't get anywhere else.
All right, and then day two kicks off with federal lien appeal procedure.
Yeah, we talked about tax liens briefly with collection due process, but there are also lien appeals that lie outside of the collection due process window. In other words, there's more than one way to skin a cat when it comes to dealing with federal tax liens, and I'm going to show you what they are. I'm going to go 3 very specific administrative procedures that are available for challenging tax liens. I'm going to talk about the burden of proof with respect to challenging a tax lien. I'm going to show you exactly how to meet that burden of proof. It's important to understand, Josh, if you're not an experienced tax pro dealing with litigation issues, you need to understand that the burden of proof is always on the taxpayer. The IRS almost never has to prove the taxpayer made a mistake, but you as counsel have to prove that the taxpayer did it. If you're challenging a lien or raising a collection due process appeal, the burden of proof is on you. So how do you meet that burden of proof? I'll use tax court precedent, actual real cases, not AI made up cases. We'll use tax court precedent to show you exactly how to meet that burden.
Don't let AI invent precedent for you. I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think that's a good precedent to set at all. Session 8 is installment agreement appeals.
The installment agreement process, Josh, available in the Internal Revenue Code, and now just about everybody knows that you've got the right to request and set up an installment agreement with the IRS. It's something that's actually pretty easy to do with the IRS using its online tool. Now, that's not always the best approach for somebody to do it themselves, but if you got a pretty simple case, it can be done. Tax professionals need to know how to set up installment agreements, and that's fine. Most of them already know that. But what happens if the IRS either rejects your request, terminates your request, or wants to modify the agreement that the taxpayer is already in? The statute gives the IRS the authority to terminate, modify, or deny a request for an installment agreement. But you also have a right to appeal that. What are the appeal procedures? IRS. How does it work? What are the Internal Revenue Manual provisions that require the IRS to consider a taxpayer's appeal in the case of an installment agreement? I'm going to go through the Internal Revenue Manual very carefully. I'm going to show you exactly what the rules are and precisely what the circumstances are that have to be present when you appeal an installment agreement, termination, rejection, or modification. So this is a very important session, Josh, and we're going to get very detailed into how this works.
Session 9 is understanding qualified settlement offers. Now, I understand what a offer in compromise is, but I also understand that those two things aren't the same. What's the difference?
Yeah, you're right. They aren't the same. An offer in compromise is the process that you use to negotiate a settlement on an assessed tax liability. So, for example, a taxpayer files a bunch of delinquent tax returns and now they owe the IRS $100 grand and they don't have the money to pay the $100 grand. The offer in compromise allows the IRS to negotiate a settlement for less than what is owed. Right? That's on an assessed tax liability. But if you're going through an audit, an appeal, or you actually have a pending tax court case and the tax liability is not assessed, it's under consideration, then there's a little known tool called the qualified settlement offer that allows you as counsel to make a settlement offer to IRS appeals, an auditor, or an IRS counsel attorney. And if they reject your qualified settlement offer and you actually end up doing better in resolution than your settlement offer was, you have the right to collect fees and costs from the IRS. So we're going to break down Internal Revenue Code section 7430, show you how this fees and cost thing works, and show you how to make a qualified settlement offer that will actually push the IRS to the table and get them to sharpen up their pencil to resolve your case on terms that are probably better than you would otherwise get.
Session 10 is alternative dispute resolution. If I know the IRS, they like to come up with all kinds of alternative disputes.
There are all kinds of ways to reach a resolution with the IRS. What we're talking about here specifically is the mediation programs available through the Office of Appeals. They have a mediation program, and it's similar to what is set up in just about every state. I think it's every state court in the country and the United States District Courts. If you're involved in civil litigation, they want you to use alternative dispute resolution, which is mediation and arbitration. The IRS has mediation and arbitration procedures available through the appeals office. These are specially trained appeals officers that can mediate or arbitrate between the IRS, let's say the examination function, and the taxpayer, right? So if they're at loggerheads as to a particular issue that is standing in the way of a resolution short of litigation, these alternative dispute resolution tools are very helpful and effective, and we're going to show you exactly how to use those.
So more secrets to beat the IRS.
This is all secrets, man. This is stuff that you don't get anywhere else.
One of the last sessions, second to last, session 11, challenging passport revocations. And I've heard a lot about people who have owed money to the IRS all of a sudden finding out that they no longer have a passport.
Yeah, that's exactly right. If you are considered a seriously delinquent taxpayer, and what that means is that if you owe the IRS more than about $65,000, then the IRS will certify you to the Department of State that you are seriously delinquent with your tax debt, and the State Department can pull your passport. They can suspend your passport. There are all kinds of reasons why the IRS cannot do this. And these reasons are both statutory and they're discretionary as laid out in the Internal Revenue Manual. And most people don't understand what the reasons are. So I'm going to take you through them step by step. I'm going to show you every single one of them. I'm also going to show you emergency procedures that are available to get your clients decertified. I've got a client right now just stuck in Honduras because his passport has been suspended. The good news is he's staying there with family, so he's not sleeping on a beach. But the bad news is he had no intention of staying there for 8 months, but his passport was revoked. So he came to me after his passport revoked and said, what do? I got to get back to the United States. So I use these procedures myself in my cases to get my clients decertified so we can deal with important issues, whether it's business travel or in this case, my client stuck overseas. I'm also going to show you the United States tax court procedure that's available to challenge the IRS's certification of a taxpayer as seriously delinquent. The tax court has jurisdiction to review these cases. This is part of the appeals process that people need to know about. This is very important. It's very common for the IRS to certify these taxpayers as seriously delinquent. Now their passport's no good.
Abandon our citizens in another country. I'm sure that will get them to pay their taxes.
Obviously causes serious problems if a guy can't get back to the United States to run his business.
The last session is another Taxpayer Solutions workshop. So another one of those forum style question question and answer situations to close out the second day and the entire conference.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Think of this one as wide open forum. And both sessions really are wide open forum. We'll be able to take questions on any issue that's been discussed over the course of both days. We'll be able to talk about your specific hard, difficult case that you've been struggling with. Bring your hard cases to the defense conference and you'll go home with a solution.
So if you've made it this far and you're not a tax pro, come to the conference anyways. You might become a tax pro. If you know anyone who is in the industry, that's who you should be sharing this video with. You should also be sharing this video with your local and federal representatives to let them know that you are fed up with the income tax system as it is, and we are fed up with having to create entire itineraries teaching people help you solve your tax problem.
If you are a tax professional and you need these continuing education credits, go to my website, TaxHelpOnline, TaxHelpOnline.com. Click on the Tax Professional tab. You'll get more information about the Taxpayers Defense Conference. This conference is offered both live and in person. We're going to be in Bloomington at the Minneapolis airport, and this is going to be October 24th and 25th, I think.
Let's get those dates right. 1 sec. It says October 22nd, 23rd, 24th on my.
So 23rd and 24th are the 2 days, right?
Okay. Yeah, because it's a 2-day. What's the first day? That's just the day people come in?
Yeah, that's the day people come in, and that's our members only thing. So let's not even talk about that. The seminar is going to be live and in person. We're going to be in Bloomington, Minnesota, across the street from the Minneapolis airport, just a suburb of Minneapolis. So that'll be live and in person on October 23rd and 24th. And you can stream it live as well. So if you can't be in Bloomington with us, if you can't come to Minneapolis, you can attend the webinar from your own office. Make sure you sign up for this conference. Go to Tax Help Online, get the information there about the defense conference, and I hope to see you in a few weeks in Bloomington.